Welcome to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Like other almanacs, our aim is to tell you a little bit about our past, our present, and events in the near future. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. Here on Delmarva, we have a number of notable and heroic figures in our heritage worth celebrating. Kitty Knight is one of them. In June of 1812, the United States declared war on Britain, who, using their ongoing conflict with Napoleon as an excuse, had been capturing American merchant ships, stealing their cargo, and pressing their crews into service. Just after Christmas that year, the British retaliated, declaring a state of blockade on the Delaware River and the Chesapeake Bay. By April 1813, Lewis had been bombarded from the Delaware, and British Rear Admiral George Cockburn had begun raiding towns along the Chesapeake, starting in Norfolk and working his way up the eastern shore to Havre de Grace. His strategy was to weaken any defenses here that might come to the defense of raids happening on the western shore at the same time, which later resulted in the burning of Washington, D.C. When Admiral Cockburn got to the Sassafras River, most of the region was in such a state of fear they could not effectively fight back against the invading force. Imagine living here on the shore at that time and hearing that British forces were surrounding and attacking the peninsula. Many people packed up their valuables and headed to the Delmarva interior to hide and wait out the invasion. But Kitty Knight was not most people. Catherine Knight, who was known as Kitty, was born in 1775 to a prominent Cecil County family. For several generations, both sides of her family had held positions of authority and prominence in the region. Her father, John Leach Knight, was a justice of the peace, and her uncle, Dr. William Matthews, served in the Maryland General Assembly and the U.S. House of Representatives. She was reputed to be a great beauty. She once visited Philadelphia and attended a ball and danced with by then former President George Washington, and many of the other congressmen and dignitaries in attendance. She was escorted by the father and grandfather, respectively, of Presidents William Harrison and Benjamin Harrison. She was the belle of the ball and several other events of that social season in Philadelphia. By 1813, Kitty would have been 38, and because she was unmarried, she would have been considered a spinster. She was, however, in her words, single by choice. And because she came from a wealthy family, she was able to live comfortably in a lovely brick home she rented on a hill in Georgetown, Maryland. But her quiet life was disrupted on May 6, 1813, when British forces attacked and burned Georgetown and Fredericktown on either side of the Sassafras River. She watched in horror as troops setting fire to the town made their way up the hill to her house. You're listening to the Delmarva Almanac. I'm Dana Kester McCabe, and this is the heroic story of Kitty Knight. Kitty somewhere found the courage to confront Admiral Cockburn, who was himself leading the raid. In an article published in 1908 by the Maryland Historical Society, her nephew William M. Knight quoted Kitty's own description of the incident. The British, she said, after landing, commenced to burn all the lower part of the town, which was largely frame. There were, however, 2 brick buildings on top of the hill in the town which had not as yet been fired. In one of them was an old lady, sick and almost destitute, and to that building the admiral and his sailors and marines proceeded at a rapid gait. I followed them, but before I got to the top of the hill they had set fire to the house in which this old lady lay. I immediately called the attention of the admiral to the fact that they were about to burn up a human being, and that a woman. And I pleaded with him to make his men put the fire out. This I finally succeeded in doing, when they immediately went next door, not over 40 feet distant, and fired the second of the brick houses. I told the commanding officer that as the wind was blowing toward the other house, this old lady would be burned up anyhow, when, apparently affected by my appeal, he called off his men, but left the fire burning, saying, "Come on, boys." As they went out of the door, one of them struck his axe through the panel of the door. That second house was Kitty's home. She is said to have put that fire out herself with a broom. She eventually bought that house in 1836. The gash in the door remained for many years as a badge of courage under fire. The 2 brick houses and a church were the only buildings in the town left unscathed by the raid. Kitty was known throughout the community not only for this story, but because of her beauty and intelligence. Though she had almost no formal education, she was known to quote extensively and accurately from literature and history books. When she passed away in 1855, she left everything she owned to her brother's children, with the Georgetown home going to her nephew William. She requested that on her tombstone her name be written Miss Catherine Knight. And so it was, with an inscription which reads, "A maiden fair with courage bold, with spirit pure and high, displayed her flag of truce, and all for poor humanity." Her house is now joined by a hallway to her elderly neighbor's house. One side is the Kitty Knight Inn, which is still in operation today. The other side is a tavern named for Admiral Cockburn, which seems a little odd to me, but I suppose it helps to perpetuate the heroic tale of Miss Kitty Knight, who beat back British fires with her broom. Well, that's all for this edition of the Delmarva Almanac. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and underwriters EatDrinkBuyArt.com for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.